guys. Welcome to this week's episode of TRUUU Podcast. I'm your host, Drea.
And I'm Alex.
And this week we are talking about parenting. What do we mean by that? Take it away, Alex. This was Alex's topic, actually, which I thought was a really good idea, but I feel like you can explain it probably better than I can.
Okay, so it's not like parenting in general. So we're going to talk about like our favorite memories, like with our parents, like our evolving relationships with them, because obviously we are adults now. So that means that our relationship has probably evolved with our parents. And then how that relates to how we feel about being parents someday.
Right. Well, quote unquote, being parents someday.
Sure.
Maybe. Yes. I actually saw a TikTok today that was like this guy, and he was just like, I don't even remember entirely like how he was setting up the joke, but basically he was just like trying to say how living in your 30s is just as good, if not better, than living in your 20s. And he was like, my reason being that as long as you don't have kids, it's like living in your 20s, but you have money. And I'm just like, amen.
You know what's so funny that you say that? The other day, and I guess that kind of brings us into like, we need to do our week update anyway, so there's that. But like just the other day, I was talking to someone at my church, and I don't know how it came up, but it came up that, you know, we're getting, well, not we, because she's older than me, but I'm getting to my 30s. Like I'm almost there, like I'm on the precipice.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, I guess it's no big deal because they say that 30 is the new 20, right? Well, I'm just like, well, I guess maybe not for my siblings because they're both married, and then like, you know, my older brother and his wife have a child.
Yeah.
And I know that my twin brother and his wife are going to be on their way there. So I'm just kind of like, for me, it'll be like my 20s.
Yeah, it's
not at all.
I think that's also like our generation specifically, that it's just like everything's been pushed back further. You know what I mean?
We're taking longer to do things, or doing those sorts of things.
And like it could be argued that the reason that we're taking longer to do those sorts of things is because like in retrospect it's taken us longer to like set up our lives, you know, like there's less job availability and like low paying jobs, you know what I mean?
Well, I think it's a lot of things, right? Because like I think that, you know, because like I look at my own parents, for example, or just, you know, like people in the community that I grew up in, because I grew up in like mostly a dairy community, really.
Right.
And it wasn't in vogue to go to college. So like you were getting married out of high school because you skipped college.
That was like the next step in life.
Like, I mean, my parents, all things considered, for their environment, got married very late. Like
really?
at my dad's 10-year high school anniversary, like 15-year high school anniversary. No, it has to have been 15 years because my older brother was like a toddler or a baby.
Okay.
And some of his classmates had grandchildren already.
Oh my God, that's just disgusting. I can't imagine that.
Well, it was like something like that, like me and my brothers being like really young, and then my dad's classmates having grandchildren. So
oh my gosh, like no judgment to other people because like that's their own life, but like me just putting myself in that position is the most horrifying thing I could ever imagine.
I mean, you know, let's think about it a little bit. So let's say, you know, you get married when you're 18, like maybe have a kid at like 19 or 20, and that kid only needs to, you know, get to like 18. So you're not really that old being a grandparent in that scenario.
So you're like 38 as a grandparent.
We're like 40s.
Oh my God.
Let's just be like a little bit generous and say you're 40s. Yeah. So like you get married young, have kids young. They get married young and have kids young.
This is also a little bit off topic, but because we're talking about like kids, we're like not even doing our week update. We're just like kind of just talking about the topic coming up. But anyways, I was on BuzzFeed as I usually am, and I was like reading through the articles, which there was a lot of interesting news in the media today, which I don't know if you've caught up with it. I might just mention it really fast, but and I don't mean like political news, but I mean like pop culture news. But anyways, not the point. So I found this article which was written by this girl who had a baby like when she was 19 in college, and she was she was explaining her experience of finding out she's pregnant like way long into her pregnancy. Like she didn't realize she was pregnant until like 3 months before she was due, basically.
Oh, how do you not? Well, I mean, things happen.
Yeah, and like
whatever.
And that's like kind of what she was like talking about in her article, how she like it took her a lot of years to talk about it because there was like a lot of that stigma about like how do you not know that you're pregnant, you know? And it's easy for people like us, you know, for example, to say that because we haven't experienced it, but then there's a whole TV show dedicated to I didn't know I was pregnant. So it has to happen. And actually, you know, Paulette, my sister's best friend, she was a toilet baby. Like she was, I don't know if I can say that. Actually, I might have to edit this out in here, but she was born as because her mom didn't know she was pregnant.
I'm gonna just text the group chat right now and be like, "Hey Paulette, I just found this out about you."
I'm gonna have to text her and be like, "Hey, is it okay if I mention this in our podcast?" She's like, "No." Anyways, yeah, but like it actually really happens where like women don't realize they're pregnant, and so this girl, she was like talking about how her and her boyfriend were like doing long distance because they had both gone away to college, right? And so they had only seen each other like every now and then, like when they had time off from college or whatever. And she was taking birth control and like they would use a condom and stuff. But then like she was like kind of like not super good about her birth control. Like she would sometimes forget and then like take 2 pills the next day and then like, you know, like stuff like that. And then on top of that, like she would have like periods every month. Like they're just a little bit lighter, but she would have periods every month. And she posted in this article like pictures of her at different points in the pregnancy. Like this was me at 3 months, this is me at 5 months, like da, da, da. And she's so skinny. Like she's way smaller than like me or you. Like absolutely no belly.
Can we just like skip a little bit and be like, was this baby healthy?
Yeah, like, actually it was born full term, no complications.
Well, that's good to hear.
Didn't show at all. And you know,
I mean, some people be that way.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just like, that is just so amazing to me to think about. And like she was saying how like eventually she ended up going, I don't even remember how she like said she ultimately found out she was pregnant, but like when she talked to the doctor was like, oh, you're like based off of like what I'm seeing, you're probably like 1 to 2 months, but like let's get an ultrasound and see exactly like how far along you are. And like when they did the ultrasound, like the baby, like the fetus had like a full on spine, like the fully developed spinal cord, like totally like 100% developed. They're just like, you're due in 3 months. And she was like,
so my sister-in-law was one of those really skinny pregnant women.
My cousin-in-law.
Like she was, you know, basically due, and she didn't even look to me like 6 months. Like it never really got like super out there.
Yeah.
Anyway, we need
some people are really like that. You're right. Okay. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Since like we're still doing our little week update really fast, I'm just gonna tell you.
Done any part of the week update?
I know. I'm just gonna tell you the other things really fast that I like read in pop culture. But okay, have you heard recently, like maybe 3 weeks ago? It was announced that what's his face, the guy who played Screech on Saved by the Bell, was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer.
Doesn't he also have like kind of a crazy past, that guy?
Yeah, like he in like 2014 he was like arrested for like stabbing someone or something like that.
Right, but I didn't know about the cancer. No.
Yeah, so like 4 weeks ago he like announced, like his like team, whatever, family, I don't know, announced that he was diagnosed with like stage 4, I forget what kind of cancer, but like stage 4 cancer.
Right.
Today they just announced he died.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, I guess like how long had he had the stage 4 cancer before he said something?
I think he was just diagnosed with it. And that's what they were saying, like in the article. They were like, the only good thing about this is that the cancer was so widespread and so like, what's the word? Like aggressive, that like it was swift, you know, he didn't suffer.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
But it's just like, dang, dude, that's wild. Like, it's just sad to hear. But yeah, so that was one of the things in pop culture today. And then also, do you know Evan Rachel Wood?
Yes.
She just like formally announced or like named her abuser, like her like relationship abuse, because she's been like a big advocate for like abuse and like you know, like relationship wellness and like all that stuff for like a lot of years. And she's always kind of just like speculated, or like not speculated, but like alluded to who it was and didn't ever say. And then today she finally announced it was Marilyn Manson.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which was like her significant other in like 2007 or something, 2007 to like 2012 or something like that.
How old is that guy? Well, I guess he just looks crazy.
Yeah, I mean, well, he is crazy apparently. Like she was like talking about how he groomed her and like it was just like a never-ending like terrible experience and like it's just so sad. But yeah, that was like a big thing, because then a lot of other like celebrities were like supporting her and being like, we're so happy that you're able to finally like name him, because now you know, like, it's not fair. It's not fair for these people to do these things and just like go on with their lives, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty significant. But yeah, those are the two things that I noticed today. What's going on with you?
It's really funny because like how you mentioned in the beginning, like, oh, I don't know if you've been keeping up or because truly, and I think I've said this to you before, but whatever. I'm making the choice right now to not be very plugged into any news.
Yeah.
Just because I don't want that kind of stress in my life.
It's a lot. It's unnecessary. Totally.
Like, I don't want to. So yeah, I wouldn't have heard about that at all. Although I did hear about when that talk show host died last week.
Talk show host. Who?
Larry King.
Oh, Larry King, yeah.
Yeah.
Was he a talk show host or was he like a news host?
I feel like he wasn't actually news.
I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of like in between.
He was before our time, really. Like early.
I remember watching him like when I was really young, like in his little suspenders. Like I remember him. And then they also like did a joke. No, it wasn't in early 90s. He was still happening in like the mid to late 2000s. Because I was watching what's it called? 30 Rock. And there's an episode in it where one of the characters goes on the Larry King show and like he's still having a show.
Yeah. Whatever.
Anyway.
So my nephew came over the other day, which was really fun because my parents were at home, so it was just like me monopolizing him. And it was the craziest thing, man. He's 6 months old. Like this week, he's like turning 6 months old, or like from his due date sort of deal.
Time flies.
I know. First of all, like, let's unpack that phrase for a second, because like I'm holding him right, and his like whole thing right now is that he likes to stand. So like we just like stand him up and like just support him a little bit. I ended up walking him across my kitchen table.
Oh my god!
Like, I'm holding him, and he's reaching his legs out because he wants to take steps.
Yeah.
But I'm just like supporting his weight and then like going with it. He's not supposed to be walking. He hasn't even crawled yet.
Oh, okay. Got it.
He's skipping some steps.
I don't know. It's so funny because I just like finished my child development class and I'm still like, I don't know at what stage kids do what. Like, I have no clue.
This is all pertinent to the podcast.
I know, this is all really relevant. Good segues.
Anyway, so yeah, like I walked him like 3 or 4 steps across my kitchen table before he seemed to get a little bit tired. But
that's wild.
And then like my sister-in-law sent me some pictures of him today, and like he has like this toy thing that like is kind of like an overhanging sort of deal. So like they're supposed to like lay under it.
Oh, or like whatever. A mobile?
Not necessarily like mobile, but you're on the right track. But it's kind of like it's almost like a little open dome thing. Okay. It's a structure that, holds things down. But anyway, so like he has stood himself up using it because like it's made out of wood because, that's what all the cool parents are doing nowadays because, no plastics or paints and whatever, which is fine. Totally whatever. But he's standing himself up on the wood thing, like holding on to it. She's not supporting him at all. He's just standing. Well, I think that she probably had like propped him up on his feet and then he just grabbed onto it. Right. And then she just like let go to see like what happened.
That's wild.
Yeah, she sent me 2 pictures of him just like standing on his own. I'm just like, can you, like, you were born yesterday. Can you please
just
stop?
Like slow down just a little bit.
Because like I was telling her, I was like, I never understood the phenomena like of, adults tripping out over kids. I mean, just like, can you like please stop growing up? Like, please time to stop. And then I see him just like, yep, I understand now. Please time stop. Because like you've been a baby for 2 seconds and you're already trying to walk.
I totally get it. Like, I'm not even like a kid person, but I totally get it. Because if it's anything like how I felt when like my dog was a puppy. Like, I totally get it. She was so a teeny weeny itty bitty, and then the next thing I know, she's a freaking hog.
Yes. Lord. Yeah, so that's essentially it. I'm just kind of like, you're gonna be a baby for like 2 seconds, and then all of a sudden he's gonna be talking to me.
That's the real trip.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like, when I texted her back, I'm just like, so is he like learning to drive next week or?
It's so crazy to think how like you, especially because this is like your nephew, how you're experiencing him at this like infant stage in his life, and then thinking like, I mean, obviously like kids when they're older, like at some point they're a little annoying. So it's like crazy to think how this like super precious little thing is going to grow up. You know what I mean? Do you ever think about
Well,
that?
I do. I think about it a lot, especially with him, because like one thing that it makes me feel like very strongly is like privileged, actually, like the privilege of being able to like be in his life like as he grows up and being able to witness the whole thing,
Yeah,
really,
totally.
because I'm going to see him grow into an adult.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. I'm not
Well,
planning on going
I'm
anywhere,
like,
but
no
or like,
guarantee, but hopefully.
yeah, so I intend on watching him grow into an adult and whatever. I'm just kind of like, it's so crazy to me to think like I'm gonna experience him through all these different stages, and like I'll be his aunt, like someone
Yeah.
from his family. I'm just kind of like, because my whole thing is like, I mean, I was always like really close to my family, especially like my close family, but like my cousins were always for the most part older. So I didn't really have a close relationship with like a ton of my cousins. Like I love my cousins for sure. The ones who are closest in age lived a couple states away, so like I didn't really see them that often.
Yeah.
So like I didn't have like I wasn't seeing my aunts and uncles all the time.
Right.
Whereas I have the intention of being very present
like seeing him all the
in
time.
yeah, because like my sister-in-law tells me like, hey, like come over on your lunch breaks on Fridays, like to just come hang out with him. It's like, yeah, man, because I want to be that really present person in his life. Because that's the craziest thought to me, like being like important to a child in that way.
Yeah, totally. That's such a trip. And I'm sure I'll also like feel that way when my sister has kids. Like honestly, I feel like I'm more excited for when my sister has kids than anything else, because like I don't want that responsibility like on me. Like I want to be able to like have a relationship with a kid and then be able to go home and be like, see you next week,
I think it'll be good for you to like ease you, like you dip your toe into the water sort of deal, the whole thing, just so you could have more of like, an experienced opinion about it.
Yeah, and like
instead of just like speculating, because this will be like the closest thing probably gets to like being your child, because it'll be your sister's child.
Exactly.
It's like it's not the same as seeing like your friends as kids, or like kids of strangers or whatever.
Like it will have my blood,
right?
Yeah.
Because like
the crazy thing though is that like I would love to say that it's a good little like teaser into parenthood, and maybe like I want kids and this is this, but as my sister said literally like 2 days ago,
when we're all there,
like on the same plane, like we're on the same like stages of life. So when she has a kid, it's probably going to be around the same exact time that I'm thinking about having a kid. So it's like I don't think I'm going to get that nice little ease into it. I would like to. I would love for her. Well, do I want her to get pregnant soon? I don't know. Anyway.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, like not a ton is like happened in my week, just being at home, playing a lot of Animal Crossing, being in the group chat for your sister and her friends' Animal Crossing stuff.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad that you have someone that like can actually like give you the
literally. Okay, so like if you guys remember from a couple episodes ago when we had Ryan on the podcast, I was giving my week update and I was talking about, how the really cool villager had moved to my island, and Dre and Ryan were just kind of like, big who cares? And I announced it the other day.
I was trying to be supportive.
I announced it the other day to Dre's sister and then like the whole gang and whatever, and they were so hyped for me because they understood.
Well, they play. I wanted to be hype free. I just like I don't get it, so it's
like,
not.
Oh legitimate. Man, you have Raymond. That's so cool.
Well, anyway, speaking of Raymond, I'm 2 episodes from finishing The Promised Neverland, and it's taken a turn.
Yes, it has.
I'm finishing it tomorrow with Robert. We have our watch date tomorrow, so we're both like, what's gonna happen?
So this is his first time watching it too?
Yeah, that's why we're watching it together, because like neither of us had seen it, and I was like, well, my friend was gonna watch it, and he was like, well, I want to watch it, and I was like, well, let's watch it together.
Sounds good.
Anyway, okay, so maybe we should move on to the actual topic of our podcast then.
Probably.
Okay, so as Alex mentioned, we are talking about like parent memories, evolving like relationships, and then ultimately like how we view ourselves as like, what we would want to do in the future as parents. So let's start with our favorite memories. Alex, you want to go first?
Sure. So like some of the most present like memories for me in my mind, especially like with my mom, is going on errands with her actually. Because like basically like I was her constant companion for a long time.
Right.
Because
What about
my
your brother
mom,
though?
well, it was kind of a mixed bag of things because like as we are growing up, of course, when we were too young to be home alone,
Mm-hmm.
we always like went with, me and the boys with my mom to go do things because my mom, she stayed at home with us basically until we got into school,
Right.
essentially. So like we were always with her, but then like it got to a certain point where like Matt was like kind of old enough to like watch over and like be at home. And the
Mm-hmm.
thing was is that like so we lived on the dairy, right? So my dad was always technically home.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was on the property.
Right.
So it was a little bit different. I think that there was a little bit more leeway in being like, well, since dad's really close by, it's not gonna be such a big deal to like,
I'm not
keep
judging at
kids at
all
home.
because I was left at home all the time, like as a little kid. So I'm not judging you at all.
And it's quite possible that the days that I'm thinking of were on weekends when my dad wasn't like really working as much, and I would just go with my mom to like department stores and
Mm-hmm.
grocery shopping and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But like I have really fond memories of driving around with my mom, and she'd be playing like her favorite CDs,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd be singing along with them together.
Oh, I think I remember you telling me this in the music podcast, how like a lot of your like early music influences, like what did you wait, hold on, don't tell me. It was why do I want to say like Aretha Franklin?
It was not at all Aretha Franklin.
Was it?
Really,
Oh,
not even close.
I remember you saying like the specific music that your mom would play, and why can't I remember who it was? Was it like Dixie Chicks?
It was the Dixie Chicks. The
Oh, okay.
artist formerly known as the Dixie Chicks.
What are they now? The Chicks?
They're now the Chicks.
Go on. Sorry.
Yeah. So like listening to the Dixie Chicks, listening to Shania Twain.
Shania Twain! That's actually the one I was thinking of. Sorry.
Yeah, so like those are like really fun memories for me, like getting to do that. And like the grocery store that we went to when we were on the dairy was this Ralph's that was basically down the street for us. And the really cool thing about Ralph's at the time, because I don't know if other grocery stores did this, but like there were child-sized grocery carts.
Oh yeah,
that, like,
I do remember that.
You could take around, and like it had like a little flag like up that said like
yeah, I totally know exactly
thing.
what you're talking about.
So like she would let me
Oh my god.
Yeah. So she would let me do that. Like we'd go, do that. And cause like my whole thing really is like for both my parents, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but like is me just wanting to like be involved with them. Cause like I love my parents.
Yeah, totally.
Love, currently, love always my parents. So like getting to like do those things with her and just getting to talk, about everything and everything. Because like that was just like she'd just take those moments to like just basically because like I like to make the joke that I'm basically my mom's disciple. Because like I was just always around because we talk about life things, and she's like, oh well, don't your brothers know? I'm just like, well, I don't know if they know. I know because I was always with you.
Right.
So like her teaching me about like, for example, I don't know if I've ever said this to you before, but it's one of my rules about dating. And like how I don't like yelling at all.
Yeah.
Like I'm 100% against yelling.
Yeah.
That's because my mom would always say to me, she's like, if a guy ever yells at you, don't, mess around with that, because that means that he'll yell at your kids. So like that was like always like her thing. I mean, not even that, of course, like myself, don't like put myself in that situation, but also think about your future kids and stuff. So like this is stuff that I was hearing, like as a kid, like she was just giving me all these life lessons.
Yeah.
In our gray Suburban, just driving around all the time. And it was always just, I love, being around her and just listening and talking to her.
Yeah, totally. That's so cute.
And then it only gets cuter, by the way.
Aww.
As the list goes down.
I just need to say really fast. So like I love that story that you're saying that she said like never date someone who yells at you because then they'll yell at your kids. Like I'm trying to like envision like if like I'm trying to imagine like what it'd be like for my mom to tell me that. And it's just so hilarious because like the only form of communication in my household is yelling. So I'm just like there's no way. Like growing up, my mom would just constantly yell at us.
Yeah, I mean it's like obviously I'm not going to pass judgment on any households that like have yelling. It's just that is a role of my family.
Yeah, and I mean it's like totally in line with like your guys's like what's the word like what's like your feel, like your vibe, that's the right word.
Mm-hmm.
Like my parents are so like opposite end, like they're so like in your face. So I'm just like imagining like, wow, what would it be like with my mom being like, don't yell? It'd be a totally different upbringing.
Well,
So
because
crazy.
like honestly, like because cheerleading was a different thing. Like having to raise my voice to be cheerleader, that was something separate.
Yeah,
But like imagine like you and I, like you're like ahead of me somewhere and I need to like call out to you. It's hard for me to really yell even in that situation because
that's
yelling
so
is so
crazy.
foreign to me
Uh-huh.
that like just trying to like it's really hard in my house to like get people's attention because like we don't really like yelling and stuff. So, you know, that whole thing is anyway, that's beside the point though.
Right. Sorry, go on with the rest of yours.
So one that I probably should have said first is that my first memory of my mom, which is like one of the warmest memories I have of her, is I don't know what age I was. I was really young. I was still in a crib because I remember standing up in it. So I was probably like maybe like 3 or 4 years old or something. And it was my birthday. And I had just woken up and my mom had like walked down the hallway like from her bedroom because like she had just gotten up as well. And she looked in and she saw that we were awake. Well, that I was awake. And she like comes over to me and like she like leans down to like where the rail is and she's like with like the biggest like warmest smile like wishes me a happy birthday. It was
That's
so
cute.
precious.
That's cute. Oh, that's nice.
Because like whenever I think of my mom, like I think about like the warmest feelings ever. Like she's just all warmth and kindness and love, really.
Yeah, a mom's mom.
Right. So then one really good moment with my dad that I remember. So which is really funny because I actually had this for dinner tonight. So it all kind of like works together. So one meal that my dad really likes to have, like when we're all kind of eating independent things, is my dad likes to eat, I think the brand is Banquet, but it's chicken pot pies, like frozen chicken pot pies. So like we'll warm them up in the oven and eat that. And I remember as a kid, because like he's eaten this my entire life. So as a kid, like he would have that and it would smell so good and whatever. And of course, because I'm me, I just want to be like involved with my parents, especially like my dad.
Yeah.
Because like
yeah, you and your dad are like two peas.
I hate the you're gonna be it's funny that you say that. But I hate this expression because I don't you know how I feel about calling parents mommy or daddy. Like it's just icky to me.
Sure.
But I am like 100% a daddy's girl.
Right.
That is just a core part of my personality. But anyway, I would just want to be involved like with that whole thing and just like want to like bond with my dad and whatever. So like the components of this chicken pot pie, like most chicken pot pies, the chicken, potatoes, carrots, and peas. So I would sit on my dad's lap when he would eat these pies and he would feed me his peas.
Aw, that's cute.
So when you said we were two peas in a pie, it was kind of like,
we're two peas.
Which is really funny
two
because
peas
like,
in a pie.
Yeah. Which is really funny because my parents both didn't know until I was basically an adult, like recently, that I don't actually like peas.
You're just like, I'm just trying to be with my dad.
Really? So I was funny. Just trying to be with my dad.
That's so funny.
So I'd eat his peas even though I didn't like them.
Oh, that's really sweet.
Which is a true testament because, you know, especially like when you had met me, I was still kind of a picky eater and I was only worse back then. So.
Aw, you need to like tell your dad and your mom to like listen to like this like section of the podcast, like solely so they could hear like the cute little things you're saying.
So yeah. And then the next one, which I'm gonna have to like force myself not to get misty even just like thinking about it. I'm gonna give myself a drink of water right now.
Okay.
So one really cute thing that I did as a kid that I didn't realize was gonna be like a moment in my life was, so I don't remember whose wedding it was, but it was someone on my mom's side of the family, their wedding, and I was gonna be a flower girl in it.
Okay.
Well, I was a flower girl in it. And like, that was the first wedding I remember going to. So I was like super jazzed about the whole thing because I thought it was the coolest thing. And I had gotten in my head, and I was really young, like I was probably under 8. So I was pretty young. I'd gotten it in my head that, well, I'm going to get married someday, so I need to practice my father-daughter dance.
Oh my God, that's so cute.
So
at the wedding or just
no, like this is after, because this is something I've seen at the wedding.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So like afterwards, like sometime afterwards, like I guess talked my dad into like practicing dancing with me, and like I put on the flower girl dress and like danced on his feet.
That's so cute.
To practice
How old were you?
Oh, I was young, like probably like 6 or 7 or something.
That's so cute.
So we practiced my father-daughter dance.
I'm sure your dad loved that. Like that's probably one of his favorite memories too.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like, I was thinking about it like as I was writing this, I'm like, I had no idea at the time, and I'm just like, I probably like created like this like memory.
Yeah, that's so sweet. Oh, Alex, are there pictures?
No, it was just me and him in the living room.
Oh, well, that in a way that's sweeter. Aw, I love it. Do you have any more? Or is that it?
That was all I had on my list.
Yeah, that you wrote down, right? I'm sure you have plenty of more memories.
Yeah, I was like, every time with my parents is a good time. But yeah, those are my top things, my top memories that stand out in my mind.
That's so cute. I was so happy to like be a part of that. Okay, yeah. So like mine are also kind of like similar to what you're saying. Like I spent a ton of time with my parents growing up, like kind of inadvertently, because like one, when I was little, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And it wasn't until I was in 2nd grade that she went back to school, and then she went back to work. Yeah. But before that, like she was at home all the time. And so one of the like most significant things that I remember is like I didn't go to preschool because my mom was like, you don't need to go to preschool. Like you're so smart, and I'm just going to teach you at home, and like, it's going to be fine. Which is really funny, have I told you the story about how like my kindergarten teacher thought I was dumb?
No.
Okay. Sorry. This is not part of my story right now, but I need to tell this really fast because my mom has like endless anger about it.
That's amazing.
So like, okay. Yeah. So she didn't send me to preschool because she was like, I was like a really like, what's high achieving like toddler, I guess. And like I really picked up on things like really quickly. So like before I was in kindergarten, I was already like able to read books on my own and like write entirely on my own. Like I was like ahead of it, like I didn't need to be taught any of it because I already knew. So the first day of kindergarten, I like go into class, and like my teacher's like, okay, like here's a piece of paper, like there's some lines, like feel free to write your name and like something fun about yourself. And then she's just like, oh, and if you don't know how to write yet, that's okay, like you could just like draw on the lines.
I was about to say, just like write something fun about yourself in kindergarten. Are you
it was like something like that. Like I mean, it was like we had to write something, like you write your name and like something else. And obviously, because I'm just like, I already know how to do this. I do this all the time. Like I can write full sentences, and all I heard is like, oh, you can draw if you want. And so me being like the kid that I was like, oh, fun, I'm going to draw. But it was really like, like a gauge of like who's in the class, who needs extra help, who like is already advanced. Yeah. And so here I am, like, just like doodling in the freaking lines. And so my teacher was just like, oh, she needs to be put in like the bottom of the class, extra help. She needs extra help. And my mom's like, are you freaking kidding me? Like I spent years teaching you just for you to doodle in class. Amazing. I was like, what? She told me we could. Anyways, that's not the story I was gonna say. But anyway.
Wait. Before you move on, I'm pretty sure I said this to you before, but because we're speaking of kindergarten and such related things, I've told you, right, that on my first day of kindergarten, because I knew like how to write and read my name as well.
Yeah.
That in the first day of kindergarten, my teacher took me to my desk and it's like, oh, here's your desk. And I looked at him just like, that's not my desk. That's not my name.
Oh my God, I don't remember this. No.
Because they had put Alexandria on the nameplate.
Oh, that's funny.
So I'm just like, I went up to it and I'm just like, that's not my name. And they're just like, what? I'm just like, it's not my name.
That's so funny. And then what did they do? Like, whatever ended up happening?
I think that, later on, like once my mom came to pick me up or something, she's like, oh yeah, Alexandra.
That's so
not Alexandria.
Funny. Speaking to that same exact vein, so my ex-boyfriend, JT, whatever. Anyways, his name isn't JT, it's John, right? But
Right.
like I for the life of me cannot remember his middle name, but it's something with a T. And so they called him JT like growing up because his dad's name is also John. So
Right.
like, what instead of calling him Junior, it's just like JT, whatever. And
Sure.
so from like very young, all he knew his name was JT. And so like his mom used to tell me the story how like on his first day of kindergarten, she like sent him to school with like a brown paper bag, his lunch, and she had written like John McLecky on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he like came home and like I forget what happened, but like she like someone told her that like they were just like he didn't eat lunch today, and she was like, why didn't you eat lunch? He's just like, because I didn't have a lunch bag. And she's like, it's right here. He's like, my name is JT. I thought it was like the funniest, cutest story I've ever heard. I was just like, oh man, that's good.
That really is funny.
Anyway, we really diverted. I didn't even like get to the point, like my first point, because we took a tangent. Okay, so my first point was that my mom was always at home, and like, she didn't have like a super ton to do when I was a kid, because like I was a pretty good kid. Like I was really obedient. I was self-sufficient. Like if she told me to do something, I would like go do it. I wasn't really needy.
Mm-hmm.
And then my sister, she was already in school. My dad was working all day. So it was literally just like me and her at the house. And so she picked up a lot of hobbies while she was at home. And I like some of my earliest memories were like, I remember she used to do a lot of painting.
Mm-hmm.
And like, fun fact, my mom is like a really, really good painter. And I remember
that's where you all get it from.
That's where Danielle gets it from.
Don't.
But like I remember one time she was like doing still life. Like she had like this like vase plant, and she was like painting the vase plant, and like I remember watching her do it and like mixing colors and like working with the different mediums, and like it was so amazing. And then like on top of that, I also remember she like completely from scratch like made like a what is it called, like a like bench swing. Like she like woodworked, like she completely made it from scratch, like bought the wood, like had a saw, like measured it all out. Like
that is interesting.
yeah, she made a whole, and it was a giant bench. Like it wasn't like a tiny little chair, it was a bench, and it like swayed and everything. And I was like, what the hell? And I remember her making it like from scratch, and it's so amazing. Like thinking back to it now, because I'm just like, who were you? Like I can't even begin to think how I would start picking up woodworking while I'm like watching over a child. But yeah, so like my mom like used to do really amazing things like that. Not that she doesn't anymore, she didn't after that, but like I remember like as a kid watching her and just being really in awe. And even now, like when I think back to it, I'm just like, wow, that's amazing. And then like my dad, he had like a really big time job in LA. He was like a director of people services for LUSD, which is like one of the biggest school districts in like our state. In the country really. But anyways, so he would come home like really late, because on top of like him having like a really big wig job, he worked in downtown LA, and like we live in the suburbs of West Covina, or like we lived in the suburbs of West Covina.
Right.
And so like that's not a fun drive. Like that is a very long drive, especially in rush hour. So like he would come home super, super late every day. And I remember specifically like when I was little and I would hear the garage open, I remember like running out to his car every day and being like, dad, like, what'd you bring me? And like, he would always like bring me little things home, like things that weren't like big gifts, but he would like always find things around his office. Like he like found this little keychain one time. He like brought me this keychain, or like he found this like little plush bear that was like this big, and he brought me the bear, and like, he would just always bring me little things. And I was like always so excited. I was like, Dad, what'd you bring me today? And like, I don't know why, like I remember that so well, but I was like, oh, I remember like that being really like a highlight of my day, is when my dad would come home.
Cute.
I know. And then also, so this is actually something that it's kind of like one of my favorite memories, but it also makes me sad in a way, but like not for the reason that one might think. But so when I was in like kindergarten through second grade, before my mom went back to school, she used to drop us off to school, obviously. And I remember that before I would get dropped off, like she would have us in the van, and like she would park, and she'd be like, okay, like before you get out, like you have to say your affirmations. And like me being like in kindergarten, first grade, she'd like make me be like, I'm the best, like I'm smart, I'm number one, I can do this. Like we would say affirmations in the car, like as like a kindergartner.
Right.
Like I remember in my early days of elementary school, like I was really, really like high achieving. Like I'm like in first grade, they were already like selecting kids to like go into the GATE program and stuff. And so like I was selected and like I was doing all this like, super honors homework, whatever. Um, and then in second grade, when my mom went back to work, or when she went back to school and then eventually went back to work, like she stopped dropping us off. And we started getting dropped off by like, Tanya,
Mm-hmm.
my sister's best friend at the time. Her
Mm-hmm.
mom used to like just pick us all up and like drop us off, like bus style. And ever since my mom went back to work, like I really took a turn for the worse. Like my academics really hit the toilet until like middle school. Like seventh grade is when I like figured it out and like it all went up, it was all going up from there. But like from second grade till seventh grade, like I was really, really like not doing it. And it's like sad because I'm like, oh my God, like me being little, it was really traumatizing when my mom like went back to work. And now as an adult, I'm like so happy she did because like that's not fulfilling. Like both of her kids are at school. Like, why is she just at the house by herself? Like I'm really happy that she did that. But like as a kid, like it was really hard for me to like transition, especially because I was so close to her.
Well,
but yeah, go ahead.
It's so before you move on from the affirmations thing, because I think that this is a really interesting topic because like not like you told me about the whole affirmation thing before, and I think that's actually a really good thing.
Yeah.
Because it's not like necessarily my parents did the same thing for me, like having me do like affirmations. But like I feel like part of my performance throughout my life, really, like just in school and in work and all this whatever, is based on the given in my household, which is all you kids are smart, all you kids are capable. No one can tell you can't do something. Like it was like when we would like
deep rooted in you.
Right. So like when we perform, and especially with that way, because my mom, of course, is very like much like the cheerleader sort, like, you can do it, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the really cool thing, like with my dad is like, he was always, whenever like he would hear, any of the stuff about us, his response to it was like, well, of course. Because he treated it as a given.
Yeah.
Like it's a given that you are going to do well. It's a given that your teachers say good things about you. It is a given that, Matt was salutatorian and, all that stuff. Like he was always, in those moments saying that he was very proud of us, but at the same time, he was like, of course,
yeah,
you guys are, doing that. So like, the impact that like it had on you as a kid and it had on me, like throughout my life to be told by our parents, you can succeed, you will succeed, like you are smart, you are capable.
That's like really, I think that's like a really vital part to like parenting is like that belief and like instilling that belief in your child that like they believe it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is kind of like I don't know, for me it was like extremely positive. I would never say it was negative, but I feel like I construed it in kind of a negative way in some senses. Like, and this might just be my personality type because I'm so hyper type A and like it's like insufferable. But like, for example, when I graduated college or like high school or like got my master's, like I had zero feeling of like pride or like accomplishment or like anything like that. Cause I was just like, okay, like I can't believe it took me this long to get here. Like I was expected to do this so long ago, like I didn't feel like I achieved anything because I'm just like, okay, finally I've reached where I need to be. You know what I mean? Like it's not like I've done something amazing. It's just like I've finally caught up.
I can understand that because I mean, I'm pretty close to the same way that you are about things like that. So I also understand like because to us, like after a certain point in time, a certain level of achievement, like in your own mind, becomes like the expected. Like, of course, I'm going to, graduate from college and like get this job or whatever. So it's, more so like, oh, when is it going to happen instead of if it happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
Although I will say that one thing that's always like just been something separate for me. It's probably because like, there's two different types of support that, I got from my parents, which is, my mom's like, constant like affirmations really.
Right.
That's just who my mom is.
Right.
She just, the compliments and love overflow with all the time.
Yeah.
And it was always there, of course, for my dad, but like the true like compliments that come from him like hit so much differently for me.
Totally.
So like whenever like he tells me that like directly that he's proud of me, like it's just one of those moments that's like
Yeah, I feel that. Like I feel that way with my mom actually. I remember specifically like so this is so insignificant, like it's so not important at all. But when in our sophomore year is when I won the West Region ITA tournament for tennis. And like, what does that mean? It really doesn't mean anything. It just means that like there's regions in the country, and I won the West Region for Division 3. And it's really not that big of a deal. Like it is a pretty good accomplishment. Like it was significant for our school because no one had ever done it before. But like in retrospect, it wasn't the biggest deal. And so when I won, I like came off the court and I was like totally fine. I'm like, yeah, like I did that. Da, 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 da. And then my mom comes up to me and she hugs me and she's just like, I'm so proud of you. And like her voice kind of wavered and I lost it. Like I was sobbing, like into her shirt, like sobbing. And I remember another girl that played for like another school in the conference, she like came up to congratulate me and she was like, hey, like Drea, like congrats. And I'm literally just like, like crying into my mom's there. And I'm just like, oh my God, how embarrassing. Like this girl's just like, okay, like this girl's making it such a bigger deal than it needs to. And I'm like, it really isn't. It's just that my mom told me she was proud. So I totally get that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, go to your next point before we get off on the tangent. Sorry.
This is my last point for this section. But another like one of my absolute fondest memories actually, which kind of has like a downside in a way, is all the travel that I did with my parents because of tennis. Because so like I don't know how it is for a lot of other sports. I know that there's like travel soccer and travel softball and stuff, but like for tennis specifically, like every single tournament is traveling. Like it's not like you have a league. It's not like you play in Covina or something, you know what I mean? It's like there are tournaments happening in Southern California and you have to just go to whatever tournament you want to play, you know? So like one weekend will be in like Long Beach, and then the next weekend will be in Palm Springs, and the next weekend will be in San Diego, you know? And it's just like wherever you decide to go is where you're going. And so I did a ton of traveling during like my adolescence. And at the time, I really kind of hated it because I hated tennis, or like I thought I hated tennis. But like now looking back to it, like some of my absolute best times and memories were on those like tennis trips. Right. Like especially to Palm Springs, because my parents, and I didn't give them credit like at the time, but like now, like I cannot be more thankful to them. But like every single time that we would go to Palm Springs, every single time we would go anywhere where we had to spend a night in like a hotel, they would like go out of their way to like make it fun for me. Like we would always go have dinner at a nice place, and then they take me to the movies, and like I could choose any movie I wanted to watch, and like, you know, like we would go look around at the shops, and like we would just make a whole thing out of it. And it was only like one weekend, you know, like 2 days or something. And like, they would like make it like a little mini vacation for me. And it's so nice because like, I can literally like just go through like tons and tons and tons of memories I have from all the trips that we took. And the kind of downside to it is that like, I really wish that my sister had a part in it all, because she didn't. Like my sister to this day, like still like you know, like sustains that she hates sports, she hates tennis, she hates all of that. So like I think my entire life she's maybe watched me play like 3-4 times. And it really makes me sad. One, because like I wish my sister would support me, but like that's beside the point. But like two, because like I really wish she had those experiences with me. Like even if she didn't like it, like if she would have just come with us and like, you know, like I said, like half the time we're not playing tennis, like we were just like making memories, you know? And she was like, and it's also like a developmental thing, like her own processing thing. Cause like we've talked about it as adults, and she's like, you know, kind of like come to terms that it's not necessarily that we have outcasted her, but maybe she like portrayed onto us that we outcasted her because she didn't like sports and that's what we were all into, and like so she felt like the outcast, but like all of us were like, come with us, and she's like, no, because you don't want to do it, you know, like it was like a cyclical thing. But like if I could do it all over, like I wish that like my parents would have forced her to come, you know, which I feel like they thought that they were doing the right thing to like let her not come, but now like, you know, hindsight's 2020.
I mean, it sounds like, you know, she's starting like the healthier processes of like just dealing like with that stuff and like understanding it. So I guess, you know, obviously I would have wanted that for you guys as well, to have done that all together, because I'm sure that would have been preferable, you know, to everyone. But you know, as you said, hindsight's 2020. What can you do about it now?
You know,
At least it's not something that like she's still harboring. Feeling a way about.
That's exactly the thing. That's like, I'm glad that like now we've been able to talk about it and be like, no, it's not that we didn't want you around us. It's just that we felt you didn't want to be around us. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's funny too, because back before I played tennis and I played soccer, and sometimes we would have like travel soccer games where we would like go different places. And that's when we were a little bit younger. So like my parents did make Danielle come with us to those, because like they're not going to leave like a 13-year-old alone at the house, you know?
Right.
And like those memories are so fun. Like me and my sister always talk about them. We're always just like, remember when like those birds had diarrhea on you and mom? Like, because there was like these birds that like flew over my sister and my mom when they were watching, and like seriously they had like some food poisoning or something. Like they just unleashed on them. And like just things like that. Like we have so many like good memories about that. I'm just like, man, like we could have had that like all throughout my adolescence, but you know, it's fine. Anyway, let's move on to the next segment here. Go ahead.
Just one comment I want to make before we move on, because I
about
think
the diarrhea.
No, about tennis. I just like to point out, you know, as being your friend for a long time.
Yeah.
Over 8 years.
Yeah.
A long time. It's so funny to me about how so late in the game I didn't know that you like really had this like really intense love-hate relationship with tennis until a lot later than you would think. Because it's only like really after like several years after we both graduated college that I'm just like, oh, so you actually hated tennis a lot sometimes.
Well, it's because like it's like hard. How do I put this?
It's truly love-hate, because there is some love, but there's also some hate.
Oh, there's a lot of hate. But the thing is, it's like, okay, here's my take on that. And I'm kind of glad you brought that up, because that's a good point. But so for like you said, to your point, we've been friends for many, many years.
Yeah.
And even you have only come to see me play like maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
And I feel like the reason for like that, and like the reason for me not talking necessarily like wholeheartedly with my friends about like my relationship with tennis, is because I'm like somewhat embarrassed by the whole thing. Like I have always felt like tennis wasn't a cool sport, and like it was a country club sport, and like it was like only the nerdy kids played it. And it's kind of like that feeling was perpetuated by the way that certain sports, and we've talked about this, how certain sports are treated in like high school settings and even college settings, you know, how like they're kind of like ostracized, put off to the side, people don't go to support it. And so like I feel like it took me a long time to just like accept that like who cares what people think, you know? So I feel like I didn't talk about it with anyone, because I was just like, I just don't want to talk about my relationship with tennis at all, you know, like in general. So I feel like it's not shocking that you're just like, I found it out so late in the game.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, because we've been such good friends for such a like a long amount of time. It's like, how could I possibly have missed this?
Yeah. No, it's not you, it's me. But anyway, okay,
so we'll move on.
Okay, let's move on to our evolving relationship with our parents over the years. You go first, Alex.
All right, cool. So I think, you know, really the overarching theme of my relationship with my parents that was especially true when I was a child is really just wanting to do anything that would make them happy. Like, I think that was really like the biggest motivation for, because like one thing that my parents are especially proud of is they, you know, are so proud of all three of us for being just really so well behaved throughout our lives. Like we really weren't a problem ever.
Totally.
We didn't really fight with each other at all. Like we had, you know, disagreements here and there, but like really nothing like too major. We really, you know, as siblings liked each other the whole time and didn't give our parents, you know, much grief, especially even when we were teenagers. We just didn't.
Right.
Like we were pretty well behaved the entire time. And I know for me personally, because I can't speak for my brothers, for me, it was because I have a very deep rooted desire to not disappoint my parents.
Yeah.
I just want to make them happy.
Totally.
Which, you know, the reasons for which I didn't really understand when I was a kid, and I'll get into it in the adulthood part of this evolution later. But, you know, at that point, my whole base like mode was like, I want to make my parents happy. And I just want to like have happy times with them, which I always did because, you know, we were a pretty happy-go-lucky family. So like that was really you know, my whole thing about, I guess, not misbehaving, because I was terrified of disappointing them.
Yeah.
Which is ludicrous, really.
Is it though? Like, I get it. Like, I get that, like, fear of, like, but here's the thing. It's like,
I'll get into it.
It's a ludicrous in the sense that, like, your parents aren't going to be disappointed with you.
Right.
But it's not, because I understand that anxiety of, like, I want to make them proud.
Right.
So I think it's a very legitimate, like, feeling to have.
Yeah, for sure. It's legitimate. I'm not saying that it's not legitimate, but, like, it's exactly what you said. Like, there's nothing it could have done.
Yeah.
That they would have been like, due to your
disappointment. Well, if you're like Jeffrey Dahmer, like, maybe, but anything any sane person would do, they wouldn't be disappointed.
So, I mean, so that's, you know, my childhood really is, you know, just wanting to do all things to make them happy, because, like, really, you know, I just always wanted them to be proud of me. Yeah. For sure. Like, that's just it. Mm-hmm. Want that. Well, and that one of my mom's favorite things, and, like, if you were to ask her this, like, what's your favorite memory of Alex, like, or what's one of your favorite memories of Alex growing up, she'll tell you this, which I think that she is under the impression embarrasses me, but as we've previously discussed, nothing really embarrasses me. Okay. But it's, like, really, like, near and dear to her heart. So she was tucking me in one night, and I don't remember, like, the context around it really, but, like, she had, like, just read a book to me or something, and, like, she tucked me in, and apparently I had, like, she was saying goodnight, and afterwards, like, I hugged myself and said, I feel so loved. Oh, that's so cute. She'll
that's not embarrassing. It's just cute.
Well, I don't know why she would think I would be embarrassed about it, but whatever. She'll, like, tell that story to anyone who will want to hear it. Yeah. That's anyone who, like, has, you know, any hearing left, she'll tell you. Because I've heard it many times in the past couple of years being brought up. Parents love to do that. They, like, latch onto their favorite attribute of you, and they're just like, who can I tell this to? That, and how I used to apparently give monkey hugs because I'd, like, cling to her, like, with my arms and legs. Okay. I'd be, like, so into the hug. She was, I think she really misses, like, the way that we all used to, like, hug her really back when we were kids. Yeah. Because I would do the monkey hugs like that, and then Jacob would do bear hugs. Oh, that's cute. And I think Matt would just hug her. That's cute. That's it. Baseline. Anyway, so, like, there's, like, that sort of feeling right to, like, my childhood. So that was, I think, really good for all of us, really. And then probably starting 6th grade and going into my teenage years, it was more so a certain amount of, I guess, distance, in the sense of, like, I, for whatever reason, got into my head that I needed to emotionally take care of myself. Okay. It's hormones. It's not that you got into your head. It's hormones that got into your head. Well, it started my bad habit of not wanting to talk about things that upset me. Which is still something that I carry into adulthood. So right. Not great. Right. So, like, I think that was a lot based in, you know, what we're talking about, like, the very real fear of disappointing my parents. Not that I was doing anything that was disappointing, but just kind of like, but what if? Right. Yeah. So, like, I mean, me and my parents had a good relationship, so I'm never going to say that, like, there was ever a point in time, like, where we weren't good or whatever, but, like, I think while I was a teenager is when I was my most distant emotionally. Yeah. Just because I didn't want to talk about my things, really. And because I was being a little bit of an angsty teenager and, you know, not be like, no one understands me and all that stuff. So, you know, like, going through that, which is whatever. And then in college, it was like, you know, the saying, distance makes the heart grow fonder. Yeah. It was like, I think that was a good, like, transition, like, period for me, because, like, you guys know, of course, you know, those who knew me in college, I would go home every Friday. Yeah. And return on Sunday, like, in the afternoon. Right. I would never stay for a weekend. Right. Because I had to go home. I had to see my family. We had to work also. Parents. Well, yeah. That was part of it, but, like, I would have wanted to go home anyway. Right. Because I need to be around my family. Like, that's one thing. Like, you know, people have asked me, like, here and there, like, would you ever move to another state or whatever? And I'm just kind of like, listen, all I really need is to be around my family. I don't want to move away from them. I don't want to be that far away ever.
Right.
I just want to always be around because like that was like what I grew up with is, you know, always being around family. Like I went to my grandparents' house every Sunday.
Can I give you a hypothetical really fast?
Sure.
What if, like, let's say like your parents both retire and they like ultimately decide to move to like Idaho? What would you do?
You want to know the real answer to that question?
You would move with them?
Is they wouldn't do it. Like I know that you're
but like hypothetically, if they did.
I think that would have to be a bigger discussion like with my siblings as well and like if they're moving at all. Because my life is in Southern California. Like
right.
Besides the whole my family thing, like my friends are here, my job's here. This is where I'd like to be.
Right.
And also because I just love the weather down here.
Absolutely. Can't beat it.
Exactly. So
can I give you one more than hypothetical?
Okay.
Sorry. Okay. So what if you like get married and like he's like the love of your life, perfect person, your parents love him, your family loves him, and like for work he has to move to like Tennessee or something?
So that would also kind of be a bigger discussion as well. But here's actually what I wanted to like bring into the other hypothetical is that my parents have already like they're on record saying that they're not going to move anywhere unless it's with their kids.
Okay.
So they wouldn't go off to Idaho on their own. Although I think that my dad would probably like to. Well, both of them really would like to. My mom wouldn't be able to survive a winter out there for sure. Not a question at all. Sorry, Mom, if you're listening to this, you're not going to be able to do it. I've told you this to your face, but you could hear it here too. But anyway, so if I were to move to another state, which I would do with extreme reluctance, but obviously, you know, if I were to get married and, you know, that sort of thing happens, then it's understandable. Such is life. You can't get everything you want, but whatever.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, depending on what things were like with my siblings, it would be on the table for them to move as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I've talked about this with Aaron a lot actually, and like we've discussed like if we would ever move. And I'm like, I would actually be open to moving to a different state depending on what state it is. Like I would never, like me personally, I would never move to like Arizona or like Texas or like the South just because that's not you're not gonna find me there. But like if Aaron were to like get a job, let's say in like Washington or Oregon or something, I'd be like, hell yeah, let's go. So anyway, sorry.
You're totally fine.
With your thoughts.
But yeah, I think, you know, we'd have to move as a family compound. I think that would be a group decision. Well, at least I would say for me and my parents.
Yeah.
Obviously, well, because I know that, you know, it's been brought up once or twice between like my twin brother and my sister-in-law. But I think ultimately the reason why they haven't is because they actually do want to stay by family.
Right. Yeah,
because
that'd be
like
hard move.
Like that's my whole thing that I talked about at the beginning of this whole podcast with my nephew, just like I want to be an aunt who's around.
Right.
And I want, you know, if I were to have children someday,
you would want them to be around.
Yeah, I'd want them to be around their cousins. I want them to, because I'll get into that later. But anyway, so I think that, you know, being at school for 4 days a week, because like my whole thing during college is I didn't want any Friday classes really ever. So the most I would compromise to is having a Friday morning class, but then like leaving right after class, essentially.
Right.
Well, and also because I would always work Friday nights and Saturday nights. Like that was like my work schedule back then. So there was that as well.
Yeah,
but anyway.
makes sense.
And then like one thing that, you know, is really a big thing for my relationship, especially with my dad, is every Sunday he would walk me to my car to say goodbye. Like my mom would just say goodbye to me at my house, and like my brother would too, because my brother was living at home at the time.
Right.
My dad would always walk me to my car, and I'll tell you what, it always felt sad. Every single time.
That's so sweet though.
It was really hard.
Relationship is so cute.
Thanks. It was really hard my freshman year of college though. Like in the beginning, that was a really hard goodbye every Sunday.
Yeah.
And it got easier, but it was always sad. I mean, now it's really nice because, you know, I still live at home you know, due to different circumstances, quarantining, whatever. Like, I'm planning on moving out, you guys, at some point.
There's no judgment, Alex.
I feel
wish
like
I could
there's
be
a
living at
stigma.
home. I wish I could live with my parents still, but I'm
Isn't that
married
funny?
like a loser. I have to
that
live
funny?
with my husband.
Isn't that funny a second, like how that stigma has turned around? Because like as we were growing up, it was kind of like the thing, like if you're like an adult living with your parents, you were kind of a loser.
Yeah, but
Which,
now it's like I wish I was living with my parents.
which I'm just kind of like, I'm an adult with like a full-time job, you know, pays my bills and whatever, but I just happen to live with my parents.
Yeah, I mean, like I think it's also like exactly what you said. It's just like different generational stigmas.
Right. So I'm glad that that's not so much a thing anymore, but I do still feel a little bit defensive about it. Mostly
You
because I'm
shouldn't.
just like, hey y'all, I'm not a loser, but whatever. Anyway, so moving on. So that like kind of takes into like adulthood a little bit. Like one thing I really like with my adult relationship with my parents is just like one, once you stop being, you know, over emotional and like growing up teenager or whatever in like early 20s, is like you start to understand why your parents made some of the decisions that they made and like
Absolutely.
as you were growing up.
Yep.
Because like my whole thing, which you know I'll say every single time, is like, you know, I might not have always agreed with everything with my parents all the time, but I can understand their motivation and just wanting me to be safe
Mm-hmm.
and wanting to make sure, you know, that I was okay and that I was going to like turn out okay. Because like, you know, I was always like from the time I was in high school until now, I just had always a really busy life. I was always really involved in things. I didn't like my other friends weren't involved in a ton of sports like I was, like because cheerleading was an all year round sport, not a seasonal sport.
Mm-hmm.
So like my friends got to do cool things together and I'm just like, well, I got cheerleading or then I got work or
Mm-hmm.
you know, when I got my big kid job, I had that job as well. So it's like always being busy. And like that was a priority for my parents, was for me to be well rounded, so that's why I was always in sports and you know doing all these different things and having a job and whatever. And you know ultimately I can't fault them for it.
Totally.
Because like
100%.
at this point like I understand. And like there was one time where I was visiting like some family in Idaho and whatever, and like my cousin was having a little bit of an attitude thing and I'm just kind of like, listen, about her parents, I was like, listen, there is nothing wrong with having parents that love you so much.
Yeah.
Because I mean, just like that's something that, and I think every kid needs to like come to grips with at some point. You know, well, most kids, because obviously there are some situations in which there aren't living parents, which I'm so
Right.
sorry.
Yeah.
But like, I would like to think that for the average, you know, parent-child relationship, it's important at some point to realize that, you know, for better or for worse, if their motivation was because they love you so much, then you really can't hold it against them.
Totally. 100%. I entirely agree.
Not that I ever really held anything against them, because I definitely didn't, but I'm just kind of like, even, you know, now with like the different things, like my parents don't like it when I stay out too late, which I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I understand that you want to make sure I'm not dead in a ditch somewhere.
Right. Right. Right.
I, as you know, an adult, can respect that and respect your wishes, because it's like, you know, like when things were normal,
Mm-hmm.
the latest I'll probably stay out, like I'll probably like roll home at like 2 or 2:30 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Back when I was a little bit younger. Now I wouldn't do that as much just because I'm old and, you know, want to sleep.
Yeah.
But, you know, when I was, you know, post college and whatever, I would hang out until like 2 o'clock in the morning and just come home by like 2:30.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd never push it really past that, because I feel like at that point it's getting a little inappropriate. I don't want my parents to stress out, because I know it's hard for my mom to sleep when she knows that I'm not home.
Right.
So, you know, just doing things actively to try to like take care of each other instead of your parents just taking care of you.
Totally.
Because not that I do like, not that I take care of my parents so much, because I definitely don't. And, you know, I'm very fortunate that I have the parents that I do and whatever, but trying my best to return the favor. Because I feel like that's, you know, my biggest thing in how I live my life now, is trying to like pay forward all that they've done for me and all that they've given me.
Totally.
Like that's because all I feel towards them is, you know, tremendous love, obviously, and gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Because they like sent me and my brothers to private school for all of my life, for sure, because Laverne was a private school,
Right.
you know, for most of my brothers' lives. like, and that, you know, has some money attached to it. Just like
some money, totally.
So yeah, like, you know, they prioritized, you know, us in that way. They're just kind of like, I'm just so terribly grateful for all the things that they've done for me, for all the choices that they made, for, you know, giving me the opportunity to, like, for one, because, you know, with my paternal grandparents, like, they took us over to my paternal grandparents' house every Sunday. And I think about how special that relationship was. And I wouldn't have had that if they hadn't thought that was a priority.
Right.
And I would have been worse for it as a person. So I'm just like, I can't, like, because I like to say to my parents, like, whenever, like, they feel like I had such a big achievement and whatever, I'm just kind of like, listen, you know, I know that this is a thing that I did, and that's great that, you know, you recognize me for that, but I'm just like, all my achievements, you have a part of that too.
Totally.
Like, it's not just me. I didn't get here, you know, just by accident. Like, you got me here.
Yeah, totally. 100%.
So, like, that's kind of how I try to treat my parents now, because I'd like to think that make them feel appreciated, that, you know, all these things that they did throughout my entire life, you know, didn't go unnoticed.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't have asked for better parents. So yeah.
Cute. I feel like everything that you've been saying today is just such like a nice, heartwarming little like feel. But anyways, okay, I will move on to mine. And I feel like we have a lot of similarities in our progressions with our relationships with our parents over the years. So when I was little, I was like really, really attached to my dad. Like to the point where I don't know why I would say this. Like it wasn't anything weird. Like I'm gonna say it and it's gonna sound weird, but it really wasn't weird. But like I would always say that like my dad is my husband. And like I think I just said that because like I meant that I loved him so much.
Okay, sure.
Like nothing weird ever.
Right,
But like
yes.
I would always just be like attached to my dad, you know, like I was just like, I love him, I love him, I love him. And then my mom also, obviously. But I feel like when I was little, I was like much more of like kind of what you were saying, like a daddy's girl. And then it really kind of changed like significantly as I grew up, because like when I was in adolescence, like when I was in my teenage years, as I've mentioned in a previous podcast, I was kind of like, I wasn't a nightmare in the sense of like I was really rebelling and like doing all these awful things. Because I wasn't. Like I was a really good kid. I would get straight A's, you know, I would do everything my parents told me, and like I never did any sort of like illicit activities. But like I really rebelled in the sense of like relationship with my parents. Like I totally was trying to like excommunicate them from my life in all the ways that I could. And it kind of has to do a lot with like, one, you're a teenager, you know, and like I feel like every teenager goes through that phase where like they're like, I want my independence, whatever, you're not the boss of me, whatever. But then on top of that, I also like, and I think I've mentioned this in a prior podcast, maybe I haven't, but I've also lived a good portion of my life with undiagnosed PCOS. And for anyone who doesn't know what PCOS is, it's polycystic ovarian syndrome. And basically what it is, it's like kind of an umbrella diagnosis for a lot of different like medical issues that one can have. And one of them is like hormonal imbalances. And so for a huge portion of my life, I had significant hormonal imbalances, which threw my personality into like, I don't want to say bipolar because I wasn't bipolar, but like I was just so incredibly like hot-headed. Like, the smallest thing, and I was just like, it's the end of the world, you know? And so it was like kind of a combination of like, one, I'm trying to find my independence. Two, I didn't hate my parents, so like I resented them because they were forcing me to play tennis and I hated tennis. Three, I was living with undiagnosed PCOS, which is really something interesting because there was like one point in my like high school when I was like a junior in high school, and I was so over all of the different like symptoms I was experiencing, because I was like having like really bad acne, I had bad mood swings, I had bad periods, I had like excessive body hair. And like I was just finally to my mom, I was just like, Mom, I need to go to the doctor because I have a hormonal imbalance. Like I straight up told her that. And so she made me an appointment to the doctors, and I went into the doctor and I told the lady, I was just like, I think I have a hormonal imbalance because this is this. And she basically was just like, no, you're just being like a over dramatic teenager. You're fine. Like she didn't run a single test on me. She was just like, you're fine.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward to a few years after that, and I was just like, okay, I have so much scarring from acne and like all this stuff. I want to go to a dermatologist so I can get like removal, like treatment, like laser or whatever. And the dermatologist, after looking at my skin and looking at like just like all the other things I was going through, she was just like, I'm going to refer you to an endocrinologist because I think you might have a hormonal imbalance. And I'm just like, are you freaking kidding me? Like the dermatologist is the one that's going to listen to me like years later. Ugh. So kids, if you think you have an issue, don't always listen to one medical professional. Go see a second one. Right. But anyways, that's my little plug there. But so I had a really bad relationship with my parents throughout high school, which is kind of challenging because I feel like my sister also had a really bad relationship with my parents during the time. Like my sister's had a really like interesting relationship with the family, as I mentioned before, because she kind of felt like an outsider for a long time. It's gotten a lot better since, but I can't imagine how challenging that would have been for my parents having both of their kids like not have a relationship with them. You know what I mean? It makes me feel really bad about it, but like I also like I'm trying not to be so hard on myself because I feel like everyone has to go through that. You know, like everyone goes through that rough patch in high school. Like it's just part of normal development and it sucks, but it has to happen, which makes me also not want children. But it's the reality of things. But anyways, so then once I went to college, it was kind of like a much needed time away. And I only really officially lived on campus my freshman year because I was given like, I mean, you were too, we're given like the grant to live on campus. Yeah. Otherwise my parents would have never like had me dorm because they're just like, we're not paying for that. Like that's been my parents. And we've talked about this, I think in like the money podcast where my parents like act like they're poor people, but they're really, really not.
Well, a little bit in their defense, you live like not really down the street, but kind of down the street from school.
Yes. But on top of that, like, you know, like right, whatever. Yeah. That's whatever. That's not beside. Yeah. That's beside the point. Even if I went to like a different school, if I went to like Redlands, they would probably try to have me commute also. But anyway, my point being that my parents act like poor people when they're not, and that's kind of why they're not, because they're always so frugal with the money. But anyways, the only reason I dormed was because I got that grant, and it actually would have been more expensive for me not to live on campus, because without that grant, like we would have had to pay more or something like that. I forget the logistics of it. But so that time that I was on campus was like really, really healthy and like therapeutic, because I felt like it gave me that feeling of independence, but it also made me realize, kind of like what you're saying, like how you would go home every weekend. It made me realize that like I miss my parents, you know, like I missed being at home. I missed sleeping on my actual like not awful bed, you know, and having a room and having privacy and just like, I don't know, like I just miss that whole life. And so it was really convenient for me because, as you mentioned, like it's not like my parents live far from Laverne. Like it takes like 10 minutes to drive there on the street. Right. So it was really nice to have that option to just like Zoom home on like a whim and just be like, hey mom, I'm having lunch at the house today, you know? And I feel like college was a really good opportunity for me to start building that relationship back. And then also I was diagnosed with PCOS. So then I started taking like, you know, birth control, and it regulated my hormones and I stopped being a crazy person. But yeah. And then into adulthood, it's like, it's really interesting because I feel like in a way I have regressed in terms of like independence, because I feel like in college I was pretty independent for the most part. Like I wasn't really financially independent, but I was independent for a lot of other things. But like now as an adult, I feel like I am financially independent, but I'm not independent for anything else. Like no matter what I'm doing, I'm just like, mom, is this the right decision? Like, mom, what should I do here? Like if I'm making rice, I'm like, mom, what do I do? You know, like it's just like no matter what it is, I'm just like, mom, you need to tell me what to do here. Like, it's like a problem because I'm just like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? Like, you know, the day that we don't have our parents, like what am I gonna do? And like if I were to ever have children, like my kids are the ones coming to me for that like help. And I'm just like, hold on, let me put you on hold. I gotta call your grandma. So it's like, it's kind of funny. And it kind of shows like, it's negative in the sense of like, oh my gosh, I've really regressed. But it's also positive in the sense of like, my relationship with my parents is so like, we're best friends. And I think it's funny too, because me and my mom are so close to each other that like, I feel like sometimes my mom also forgets that I'm her kid. Because like to exemplify that, like we'll be like skimming through, like, let's say like we're just going through like, I don't know, HBO, and we're like looking for something to watch on TV, right? And she'll like find a movie, like an old movie, like let's just say Breakfast. I've seen Breakfast at Tiffany's, but like let's just say Breakfast at Tiffany's for the sake of it.
Sure.
And she'll be like, have you seen this movie? And I'll be like, no, I've never even heard of it. And she's like, you've never seen this movie? I'm like, Mom, you raised me. Like, you're the one that showed me the classic movies. Like, how, like, what do you mean? Like, you know, the movies I've seen, you know, like she'll like forget that like she's the woman that raised me, and she'll be like shocked that I haven't been exposed to something. And I'm just like, like, this is your doing. Like, I was exposed to whatever you exposed me to.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's like a funny like realization that I've come to, like, now having like an adult relationship with my parents. And with my dad too, like I mentioned earlier that like my relationship with him went kind of sour, but like I feel like we've really like built it back. And it's like funny because I will always tease my dad for like some of the things that he, because my dad's like a very special person, like not, and I don't mean that in a negative way, like he's just like, he has like his way of being, and it's not necessarily like the way that me and my mom are. And so I feel like a lot of times, like I will tease him or like say things, like be like, oh, like that's such a thing my dad would say, you know, or stuff like that. But if anyone ever tries to challenge my dad in any way, I will lose it. Like I'll be like, don't you dare. Like to kind of exemplify that, like there's one time, I think I've told you this before, there was like one time we went to Mexico and we were picking up one of my cousin's girlfriends. And first of all, the whole thing was like already messed up because we went to pick her up and she was like getting her nails done at the salon. She was like, oh, you guys get away from me. And like, so we were waiting like 30 minutes for her to get her dang nails done. And I'm just like, why are we even getting this girl? You know, like I was like, she has no relevance to what we're doing. We're doing you a favor. And then finally she finishes. We've been waiting for her for 30 freaking minutes. And she's just like, make up my mic, you know, and like she like introduced herself, and then she like throws her purse in the car and like sits in the front seat with like her boyfriend, who's my cousin, who was driving the car. Like she just like doesn't ask, doesn't do anything, like just sits herself in the front seat, and then like forces my dad and my mom to sit in like the back seat. And I was like, I had never been so angry in my life. Like I was like, what kind of level of disrespect do you have to like be raised with to think that that's an okay way of handling this?
Right.
And that, and it's just, it's so stupid because like it really isn't a big deal, but at the same time, just like, my father is the man of this house. He should sit in the front seat. Like it's so like, and it's funny because like I'm very like feminist, like I'm machismo, but like in that situation, like in a situation where like my dad's authority is being challenged by someone else, I'm very like, excuse me?
Well, that is a very natural thing, like for sure, because like I've had this conversation with my mom plenty of times, because I think we just recently talked about this actually, because like she'll tell me like not to get like so pushed out of shape about something. And the thing is that I don't get pushed out of shape when it's about me, but when it's something concerning like a member of my family, like especially my parents, because they're the ones, you know, that I'm around the most, it's kind of like I'm gonna throw some hands right here.
Yeah, seriously. It's like a weird like phenomenon that happens.
Yeah, because like she only gets upset when it's about, you know, us kids, or like my dad only gets really upset about if it's like my mom or us kids.
Yeah.
And I only really get upset when it's about them. We're never getting upset for ourselves.
It's just like this huge like cyclical
thing. Because it's like people can say what they want to me, what they want about me. I don't care. That doesn't matter to me. But as soon as it involves, you know, one of my loved ones, the gloves are off.
It's over. That's definitely like what I have realized has become an issue with me of late. But anyways, let's move on to us in the future. Like what do you hope to take from like maybe your experiences, and you know, like kind of use that in the way that you would parent your own children?
So, you know, really, as much as I can give like my future children the upbringing that I have, I feel like that would be just fantastic, because I find really no faults with the way that I grew up.
Right.
I know that like my mom said to me personally before, because like I said, I spend a lot of time with my mom. We talk back and forth about a lot of things. So like I just hear a lot of this stuff from her, you know, where she would have wanted to change like, things about, you know, how we were raised like here or there or whatever. And I'm just kind of like, I don't really think that there was anything wrong with the way that we were brought up. Like, because my whole thing is that I was basically a witness to my parents and like my grandparents' very extreme generosity and kindness towards other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if that's what I'm taking away from like my childhood, then I think that I'm coming out pretty good.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's something that I want to, instill, in my kids, like just being good and being kind.
Yeah, totally.
Because like, what really more do you need to do in life, really? Like, if you're just like basic, resting pulse is kindness, then what else is there?
Yeah, I totally agree.
And ideally, because I saw this written in yours as well, ideally I would like to be at home with my kids when they were young, like before like they go to school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how feasible that is to really do in this day and age, especially in Southern California with like the price of living and all that stuff. Because like actually like I've kind of had a conversation with my mom about it already, because like that's something that she did, and that's something that my sister-in-law is currently doing, and that's what my other sister-in-law is planning to do.
Right.
And I'm the only like kind of outlier in the sense I'm just like, well, I really don't know if that's going to be something that's feasible.
Right.
It's something I want,
depends
sure.
on like who you marry,
I mean, yeah, it depends on that. And then, you think about how hard it's going to be to get back into working after taking like 5 or 6 years off.
Yeah. Especially like how the like workforce is moving these days.
It's difficult to re-enter the workforce that way, I would think. Of course, I don't know anything about anything because I have 0 children, but
yeah,
I would think that being out of the game for so long, it's gonna be really hard to get back and being like, well, because I feel like people will look at you a certain way, which it doesn't matter to me necessarily what people think about it, but it's going to matter if I can't get a job.
Yeah, totally.
Which I think it's a little bit different, like for you and I who like kind of work in like a school environment. I think it might be a little bit easier in that sense. But I would love to do that. It's actually already something I feel pretty guilty about. I'm not even a parent. I'm just like, I'm already feeling like guilt that I might not be able to be at home that entire time with my kids. Whenever I get to that day, because obviously I need to get married, settle down before any of that happens. But it's something on my mind already for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Because like I'm not necessarily like signed up for that idea in the sense of like it's a woman's place to be at home with the kids until blah blah blah. I'm not down for that. I don't subscribe to that. What I do subscribe to is I want to be there for them, and I want to be that person for them that my mom was for me. Totally. That's my motivation for that, not the it's a woman's place motivation.
Oh, 100%. That's never, yeah.
It's because like I think about like how miserable I'd be if I was missing all my child's first moments because like they were in daycare and whatever, and someone else was like seeing those things and I wasn't.
Totally.
I'd be salt in the earth. I'd be pretty upset about it. But anyway, I mean, as far as like, because I saw that you put like disciplinary things on there as well, like I feel like I'd be kind of at a loss for that. I'd have to see how my kids would be, just because like me and my brothers are never really that ill-behaved. So like we didn't get grounded. We'd get like put on restriction for like a couple days. Like we could restricted access to certain things, like only so much video games, only so much TV, like that sort of thing. But we really didn't need to get like punished.
Yeah.
Really. But anyway, I like to have somewhere between 3 and 4 kids.
Which I saw in your notes, and that is absurd, Alex. Oh my God. I mean, good for you, but like, oh my God, like that's so many.
Okay, here's the thing. Really, if you're just being honest, you think about me and how I am, doesn't that kind of make sense though?
I mean, like, yeah, it makes sense. Like, this is what I was saying in the beginning too. It's just like, I don't have judgment for you. I don't have judgment for people who got married early. Like, I really don't. It's just that when someone tells me something, my immediate response is to imagine myself in the situation. Right. So when you say like 3 to 4 kids, I'm like, holy hell, that is so many kids. Jesus. But I mean, like, yeah, I can see you doing it.
Yeah, me being the person that I am, because like one thing that anyone who's like knows anything about me knows, like probably most of my girlfriends really, is that I want to have a family.
Yeah, you wanted like, kids yesterday.
Exactly. Like, if I was in the position to like have children, if I was married, settled down, like had, of course, the finances for it, because I, don't want to do that and it be, really
Not
hard on the
supported.
kids because I can't support them. Like there's that.
Right.
But yeah, if there was the right conditions, yeah, I'd have kids. Because not that I love children, because I don't like other people's children. I don't want to really.
You love like your children, your family's children.
Right.
Yeah.
It's different when they're related to you.
Totally.
Like my nephew, I'm just like, he can have anything from me. Ask and you shall receive.
That's so funny.
Love that child, but everyone else's children's like, he.
I feel that.
And I think like one thing that has been probably one of the most important things in my life that my parents have always said to me that I'd want to pass on to my own kids is they'd always say to me, there's not one thing that you can do to make me stop loving you. Like that's something I'd hear constantly. And, as, corny as it might be for some people, it does something for you to know beyond a shadow of the doubt that your parents love you.
Totally, 100%.
Like if I were to like list my absolutes in life, because I feel like I'm a person who doesn't like to commit to absolutes to certain things for most of my stuff. One of my absolutes would be my parents love me.
Yeah, totally.
It's like I have never once doubted it.
Absolutely. And that's how it should be, really. And
there's it's how it should be. And there's so much security in that feeling. Like so much of who I am as a person and how I feel just like secure as a person has come from the fact that, I know that my parents love me and I know that my parents like love each other.
Right.
So that's something that I want to pay forward. And also like what my parents did for me as far as like having us visit with my paternal grandparents every Sunday. That's something I want to pay back to them. Like that is my plan.
Yeah, that's like a nice tradition to have.
I'd like to think that my siblings would do something similar, but like that's something that I want for my kids because I think about how indispensable it was for me growing up. And like for me now, like to have had that kind of relationship with them was one of the biggest gifts.
Yeah, totally. So, I think I would want to do that too with if not like more often.
And I mean, it's also, easy to, do because my mom also, like how I want kids yesterday, my mom wants to retire yesterday so that she can take care of all her grandchildren.
Oh, that's the dream.
She only has, the one right now. And I like to tell her, just kind of like, listen, by the time I think that we really actually start like having kids, like you'll probably be retired. So chill.
Yeah.
But yeah, she wants to basically create a Wearsma daycare.
See, I'm going to have to sign up for that daycare because like, unfortunately for me, obviously like my mom is not in a position where she could probably be caring for children. So I'm like, I'm going to have to find some sort of care system. It's going to be awful.
Yeah, my mom is very against any of us putting our kids in daycare. She's just like, I don't want a stranger looking after your children. Send them my way. I'm just like, hey, man, whatever.
That's ideal. Yes, what a lucky part of your life.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously we'll get there when we get there because I have my one nephew and that's it. And that's, probably going to stay that way for at least another like 1 or 2 years, maybe. I don't know, what my siblings' plans for that are. But anyway, yeah, that's, more or less it, just something similar to what I had, making sure that my kids feel loved and secure in the way that I did because my parents gave me everything and
you just want to like pay that forward.
For sure. Just like I'd be lucky to be able to pay that forward.
Totally. Yeah, mine's really similar in the sense of like in a perfect world, I would want to be a stay-at-home mom just because I know how much that positively affected me when my mom was at home. But like you said, how realistic is that really? Especially because like my husband unfortunately doesn't have like a very like he can't be like the sole breadwinner basically for at least with like what he's doing currently. I don't know, maybe in the future if he were to get like a really big time job, maybe. But we would need 2 sources of income. So I don't know how realistic that would be. But I would like to, and I've kind of mentioned this with Aaron, how like I'm like in the event that like he were to get a job offer like in I don't know, Oregon or something, and the cost of living there is much lower than living in Southern California, Los Angeles. I'm just like, maybe we would, like, maybe I would like be a stay-at-home mom and like, you know, be one of those people who just like does PTA all day and like, you know, does different like fundraisers. I could do that, you know, and it's going to your point also. It's not because I feel like I would need to be like the woman should do that, but it's solely selfish in the sense like I don't want Aaron to do it. I want to do it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I were to come home and Aaron's just like, oh, like the baby had the first steps today. The baby said dada. I would be so pissed. Like I'd
Right.
be like, I'm mama, you know? So like it's purely selfish. It's not because I'm like, oh, women should do it, but it's more because like I just feel like I want to do it. I feel like I would do a better job. I trust myself more. But yeah, that's like one of the main things I would hope to do, but we'll see how life pans out. Another thing that like this is kind of like a debatable, well, not a debatable, like a hot topic, but I would like to normalize like alcohol and drugs to my kids like from a young age. And my reasoning behind that is because like my parents did that. And I feel like it's a really like typical thing of like Latin families to do this, but it's like really normalizing those like toxins, I guess, because like then they're not taboo. You know what I mean?
Okay, so I want to throw a question in there real quick.
Sure.
Because by drugs, do you mean like weed? Because otherwise, you know, the viewers might or the listeners might think like, do you mean cocaine? Like
No. Okay, so I mean like legal drugs, like
okay.
yeah, like weed. I'm not gonna be like, oh, heroin's so cool, you know, like, and it's not even that like I'm trying to like I'm not gonna be like smoking a blunt in front of my kids or anything, but it's like I want to normalize the things that like they might feel inclined to try when they're older, because I feel like a lot of times when that's like held as like a restricted thing, they're so curious, like kids are so curious that they're so eager to like find that independence and like try it. Like go ahead.
I can understand the idea of wanting to have open and honest conversations about things like that in the event of like wanting to make sure that your kids are doing something safely instead of sneaking around.
Exactly.
I can understand that motivation.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that I'm going to be like forcing it down their throat. It's more of like educating them like this isn't something that's like foreign. It's something that's normal. It's something that exists, and like it's important to know that like, you know, it's dangerous in a sense, but it also cannot be dangerous if you're safe about it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like and I don't like using drugs in this example, but like with alcohol, for example, like when I was a kid, my parents would like let me taste their wine or like let me taste their beer. And, you know, like as a kid, I would like sip it and be like, ah, it's so nasty, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And like they would just get a big kick out of it. And I feel like growing up, like I mean, you could attest to this, like in college, like I wasn't like a big drinker, you know, like
I was thinking as you were saying that, I'm just like, I do agree in the sense of out of all the people that we hung out with, you, when it came to that stuff, you weren't the one who was out of control.
Yeah, because I was just like, this isn't like, I didn't feel like, oh, I'm on my own. I get to do all these crazy things. It's like, this has just been around me my whole life. And it's like, I don't feel the need to like go crazy. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's something that like I feel like I would want to make like normalize around my kids so that they also don't feel like, you know, got to party, you know, hopefully. And who's to say like how a kid will interpret that and take it like into adulthood, but like just going off of like me, my sister, like the way we were raised and the way we turned out, like I would hope that my kids would have the same result. So that's one thing.
I can understand that.
Yeah. And like I said, like it's not like I'm gonna be having my kids try weed, you know, like I'm not gonna do that. But like if they want to sip my wine, like I'll let them sip it, you know, just like they can get a little taste, whatever.
Sure.
Anyway, so the next thing is kind of what you're saying also. When I was growing up, I was never grounded. Like we were punished, quote unquote. And so like if we did something that like my parents deemed out of line, we would get a punishment. And usually it was really interesting the way that this worked because my parents would be like, no TV for a week or whatever, you know? And we'd be like, oh man. And like, it would be a whole thing of us being like, oh, like we messed up. And then like maybe like 2 or 3 hours later, we'd go into the kitchen and my mom's cooking and she'd have the TV on. We'd be like, what are you watching? And she's like, Full House, you know, like something like that. And we just like watch the TV together. And so it wasn't even like my parents actually like went through with the punishment. It was more of like, you have to understand that actions have consequences. And like, there's like a whole kind of like an act in a sense to like convey that to us so that we would learn the lesson, and then they would be like, okay, like we're done with that, let's move on with life. And I feel like it really worked because like me especially, I can't really speak to my sister because I don't necessarily know how she felt all about it, but like me, whenever I would get punished, like I wouldn't do the thing again, you know, like because I'd just be like, I don't want to deal with that again. And so I
Right.
feel like I would never be like to my kids, like, you're grounded for 2 weeks, you can't do anything you want to do, because I'm like, what's the point of that? Like they're just gonna get more frustrated in that time. So my intention is more to like instill rationale, like as to like an understanding of like, this is happening because you did this, versus actually doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like my view on discipline. Um, Another thing that I would do is like get my kids involved in some sort of extracurriculars.
Right. Yeah.
And like what that extracurricular is doesn't necessarily matter to me. Like I would prefer if they liked sports, because I like sports, you know, like I
Right.
would like to be, well, I mean, I wouldn't like to be, but like if I had to pick, I would prefer to be like a soccer mom, or like, you know, like bring in the orange slices to halftime, you know, like that's the type of thing that I'm comfortable with because I grew up in it, I'm familiar with it.
Right.
Versus like if my kids end up being like ballerinas, like that's fine too, but if I had a preference, it would be like more traditional, like
Yeah.
rough and dirty sports. But
I
I
agree.
want them to like choose anything that they want to do, as long as it's something additional to school that they're doing, you know, like I don't want them to
Right.
just go to school, come home, watch TV all day.
Right.
Yeah, they have
Makes
to get
sense.
involved in some sort of like activity. And then lastly, I want to instill the value of education, as my parents did in me. Like I said, when I graduated college, I didn't feel like I accomplished anything. I was just like, okay, like I was excited to do this my whole life. And I feel like one, that's kind of sad, but two, it was really good because it like, I never even for 1 second considered not going to college, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like I have a lot of friends who are like, maybe I'll go to college. Like I'll start, even my husband, you know, like he went to community college and then eventually like, you know, finished his degree at Cal State LA. And like during that time, there was like a period in his life where he's just like, am I really going to finish this? Like his siblings, like they started college, didn't finish. And so it was kind of like a different life experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy for me to think that someone has to go through that, you know, like considering like, will I not finish college? Like, will I have to kind of like work, like, you know, I hate to throw her, not that I'm throwing her under the bus because it's not necessarily a bad thing, but like his sister, for example, like she's a manager at like Panda Express,
Right.
and she's constantly kind of just like, this is a hard job to maintain because she has to work so many hours. They're always
Yeah.
rotating. Like, you know, it's not steady. It's not just kind of like, you know, kind of like you and me, like we work Monday to Friday, like
Yeah.
7:30 to 3:30 or whenever, or I don't know your hours, but like that's my hours. And we get weekends off. I get holidays off. And for the most part, it's like a really standard schedule versus like someone who doesn't have the, you know, benefit of a job like that, and they're like rotating schedules. And even you, like you did have a degree and you had a job that had rotating schedules, and that's so like difficult to like manage.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, I don't know, it's not a guarantee that if they have a degree they will have like an easier time with their job, but I think it puts them in a better position to have an easier time, you know what I mean?
Right. And yes, because I definitely agree with you both in the extracurriculars and in the value of education. Because, like, you know, I said earlier that, you know, one of my mom's catchphrases was, like, you know, the thing about the yelling. But the
Mm-hmm.
second one that she had was, you're going to college.
Mm-hmm.
There
Mm-hmm.
was no ifs, ands, or buts on whether or not, you know, me and my siblings are going to go to college. We were going to go to college.
Totally.
I think that, you know, I think nowadays, at least, going to at least get your bachelor's or maybe like even going to like a trade school is like the minimum you need to do in order to like have a fighting chance in certain respects. To have like
Yeah.
a semi normal, you know, not stressful work schedule, like you're just going to have to do one of those two things.
Yeah. Because even like right now, with like in the midst of the pandemic, it's like challenging because like all these people are considered like essential workers. And they're
Hmm.
the ones on the front lines, like, you know, the people working at grocery stores, at like fast food places, like they're the ones that have not taken a day off during the whole pandemic. And they're like the ones being exposed to like the germs and like the virus and
Yeah.
everything. And it's like, that sucks, dude, because like You know, like you and I have been working from home. Like we don't have to have that stress on us because we have the luxury of a job that allows us to work from home. But like the reality is that all these people working in quote unquote essential jobs, minus obviously like medical professionals, are the people that don't necessarily have degrees. And that's like the sad reality of it. And it's like, I really respect them because they're really putting themselves out there, and that's like really hard to do. But like, I just don't want my future children to have to struggle in that way, you know, like have to put themselves in that position.
Yeah. And that's, you know, really what it is, because like, you know, obviously there's having whatever kind of job that's perfectly respectable, you know, because like I knew like career in and out people back when I worked in and out, like there's nothing wrong, you know, working in fast food in that way, you know, but I'd want the same thing. And I think that most parents would want the same thing, is just like their kids not to have to struggle.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, actually really why, you know, I'm living at home with my parents, because they're just like, hey, listen, like, you know, you save your money until you're ready and you can afford to move out on your own, because we don't want you to struggle.
Absolutely.
It's like,
yeah. I think
that's a good philosophy.
That's the core of this whole podcast, is like parenting should be with the mentality of like the best for your kids. You just want them to succeed. You don't want them to struggle, is like the core of it all, you know?
Yeah. And luckily we both had that.
Luckily, yeah, we're very fortunate because that's not the case for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But anyway, oh man, we've been really talking for a long time. I feel like my throat is dry.
But it was some good things. It was some good feels in there.
It was a really good podcast. I really like, I'm going to tell like my mom to listen to this podcast. So cute. I really liked your stories especially. But yeah, you guys, I hope that this triggered your emotions, pulled on the heartstrings. And if you can relate to us, hit us up on our Instagram. But we will talk to you guys next week. See you later.
Bye.